me, I'm Piyush and I'm going to be your main host in the webinar today. I have now I have about 9+ years of experience of mentoring students targeting MBA from tier 1 schools globally. I've helped people get into the best schools in India like ISB, IIM Ahmedabad, Bangalore. I've helped people get into the best schools abroad as well, including INSEAD, London Business School, Wharton, Harvard, Stanford, the colleges that come to your mind. So it has been 9+ years. I have helped students get into their dreamy schools. And myself, I've been a student. I have prepared and taught for both GMAT and CAT. So I have been a student. I have been a tutor myself. I've scored a 740 on the GMAT with a Quant 50 and Verbal 41 in my first attempt. And I've also scored a 99.9 on CAT. CAT is basically those who are from outside India. CAT is basically, imagine it a Indian parallel of GMAT. So if you want to do an MBA from India, tier 1 schools in India, you'd go for CAT. So that's about my scores. And personally, if you ask me, I like analyzing trends and data to come up with strategies. So I'm someone, you give a test to me and I can actually dissect it down and understand what is the best possible strategy to tackle it. So that's a key quality about me. Not that I want to boast about myself. The only reason I'm telling you this is because the webinar is going to be focused on strategy. So I'm going to tell you a lot of things from my own experience, of working on my GMAT journey, working on other people's GMAT journey to help you guys understand how you can actually go about and prepare in a very organized fashion. Okay, so that's great to know from you. Also, you have already responded to the poll. I see many people planning to take it in July, like some people rather planning to take in July, but most of you are planning for September or later. So good to know that, guys. Again, as I said, this webinar is going to be much more beneficial for those who are just starting their prep or in the early phases of their prep, because this is more about making sure that you are doing your prep right from the get-go. Okay, Abhishek has a question. Abhishek says, is CAT tougher than GMAT? So Abhishek, depends. Again, the webinar is not about CAT versus GMAT, but very quickly to answer your question, CAT is definitely difficult compared to GMAT for quant. For verbal, I would actually say otherwise. So GMAT is much more difficult for verbal than for CAT. So if you're someone who's preparing for both CAT and GMAT, probably you should prepare for CAT quant and GMAT verbal. That should cover most of the things. Let me put it that way. But obviously there are differences that you have to take into account. But yeah, coming back to track again, before we start, a very quick announcement. This is a very new initiative that at GMAT-Viz team is taking. In fact, at GMAT-Viz, we are very focused on helping you improve your scores, helping you in the entire GMAT journey. In fact, as a part of our initiative to help people improve their scores and help people learn more about B schools, we have been arranging multiple webinars and multiple different initiatives we have been taking. One such initiative is recently taken up by us, where we are organizing a B school talk show. And in this B school talk show, we are inviting college students and alumni from the top schools around it. So in chapter 1, what you see on your screen right now are some of the colleges that are confirmed already. So college students from these colleges and alumni from these colleges are going to come on this talk show. And this talk show is going to start from next Saturdays, which is 17th of July. And this is going to happen on our YouTube channel. So in case you want to subscribe to the talk show, I'm just giving you the link in the chat. This is going to be very, very interesting because you will get to hear from the students, the alumni about the schools, about the application process. And we will not just stick to this schools. Even students who have applied to this and gotten into this schools would have applied to multiple other schools. So they will share their experiences with you to help you get a very good idea, because round 1 and round 2 both are coming close now. So in case you are looking at understanding about the schools, this is the perfect place to be in. Do register for it. You have the link in the chat. Please click on the link and do share your details properly in that. Make sure that you enter all the details. In fact, we are also going to send out in notifications on WhatsApp, so that in case you miss out on emails, you at least have the WhatsApp messages to know about when the webinars are happening. So this will happen every Saturday at 7 p.m. IST. At every Saturday, 1:30 p.m. GMT, you can think of it that way, on our YouTube channel. And this is the chapter 1 that we are launching, and there are many more schools which we are going to join as we speak. So these are the schools that you can see are confirmed as of now. So this was a quick announcement that I wanted to do. And a very good thing, this is conducted in liaison with a student-driven initiative called Mentoroni. These are group of students who want to give it forward to the society, pay it forward, and we will be donating a part of, like, for every webinar that is conducted, we will be donating a certain amount to charity, to COVID relief charity, as from our side as well. So this is a good initiative both to help you and the society at large. So do join in big numbers and do share it with your friends who are interested. So you have the link, you can copy it and share it with your friends to know about it more. Okay, so let's get started with the main part of the webinar now. I've been talking about a lot of different things, but let's get started with the main part now. So how do you create an effective study plan? How do you reach a 700 plus or a 750 in a step-by-step fashion? Now, before I come to that, I would want to know from you. A lot of you are saying that we have just started or we are yet to start. So how have you started? Tell me about that in the comments or here in the chat here. Tell me about your journey till now. What is the plan of action that you are following today to go about your prep? What is the strategy that you are following today to go about your prep? I would like to hear from you. And the reason I want to hear this before I talk about what is the right way to go about it is because we want to understand. We want you to understand what are the other things that you should not be doing as well. Okay. So please tell me, what do you think is the right way to go about it? Okay. So Abhishek says took GMAT Viz course 3 weeks ago. Okay. So Abhishek, that kind of is a very nice thing. Again, not nice because you have taken our course. It's because GMAT Viz plans your learning curve. So that's good to know. Ajma says I bought prep books and following their 8 to 12 weeks plan. Okay, so you're saying that I planned that around. Okay, so Suchet says started GMAT prep with GMAT Viz. Okay, happy to know that, Suchet. This is planning to take up online coaching and good mock test series. So what Aditi you are saying is translating to that you're planning to do some courses and then take mock tests around it. Okay, what about others? I started off with OG, which only left me perplexed, is what Kiran says. Okay, very common thing, Kiran. A lot of people, in fact, that's the most common way to go about it. In fact, when I probably, the way we have been brought up in India especially is that you look at the last 10-year papers, those 10-year guides, and like prepare around it. So when I started also, I had this feeling that, okay, let me get the OG and then, yeah, study from it. That should help me prepare. Okay, Sanif says, took a mock test, analyzed my score, and then took to preparing from GMAT prep books, about 7 weeks of serious GMAT prep. Good to hear that, Sanif. Found my strengths and weakness and my abilities, what David said. Tulika says, took GMAT Viz a week ago. Happy to hear that. Trying to complete the concepts and then practicing the official guide. I tried OG for some time and found it worthless. Okay, guys, so very good inputs. In fact, that's what most people do. Most people, when they have to start the GMAT prep, they start by taking a mock test. That's the first thing that they do. Again, I have mixed thoughts on those. This particular step, at least. I'll come to that. The second thing which people do is they end up starting their prep without a proper personalized study plan. Again, very important. Every single piece that you can see, it's very, very important over here. I wanted to focus on each of these words: personalized and study plan. Most people do not start with a study plan at all. They just think about, okay, let me take a mock test. Let me understand where you are weak or where am I weak. And let's focus on solving more and more questions. And many people just rely on the OG alone or too many resources. They'll just go and on the web, they will just go and do too many things, different things. But what they do not do is have a proper plan of action. Imagine, again, a good number of you would be working professionals. Okay, you work on your projects, right? You work on your office projects. How do you go about your office projects? How do you take up your office projects? Do you just take up something randomly or you first plan around that? Let me ask you this question in quick yes/no format. When you work on your office projects, do you take up anything, any activity, any part of that activity randomly, or do you have a proper plan of action in place first? A quick yes/no. If you take a proper plan of action first, if you have a proper plan of action first, then select a yes. If you do not have a proper plan of action, select a no. Okay. I have a good number of responses, but I wait for a few more. So when you prepare, when you work on your office projects, when you work on your professional life, okay, you have a poll, Ajmal, you can just put in your response in the poll. What do you do? How do you start with the activity? You just start with the activity or you plan the activities first? That, okay, this is how I'm supposed to do it. This is the step-by-step I'm going to do. Whatever it is related to a client or your internal company related work, how do you go about doing that? Okay, so I see a good number of responses already. Let me end the poll very quickly. So most of you are saying that I plan the things well first, right? That's how you do it, right? That's how you treat your official work, right? 84% of you do that. 15% of you don't do that. Again, my recommendation is you should definitely do it. But why are we treating then GMAT differently? There's no reason for that, guys. GMAT is not, I'm not saying it's a difficult test. I'm not saying it's an easy test, but it is a very, very important test for your future MBA. And getting into top B schools is not easy. You need a good score for that. So don't take GMAT lightly. Why are you taking it lightly? You need to make sure that you have a proper personalized study plan in place before you start. In fact, when I asked this question, very few of you said that just one person said that I'm actually using a plan, but that was also again an 8 to 12 hour plan, which may not be very personalized. Some of you said I'm using GMAT-Viz because again, GMAT-Viz offers a personalized study plan, but very, very few people do this. And in the end, I have seen these people coming to me and telling me that, okay, I have been spending 1 to 2 months I've already spent on my prep, but I'm nowhere. I've actually lost this time. So very important, guys. The most important part is to plan your prep right. So in simple terms, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to take you through the entire process in a very detailed manner. But just to give you a quick overview about what you're going to hear in the next 1.5 hours or so is on your screen right now. So the overview of scoring a 750 plus on GMAT, the 5 or 4 steps that you have to follow. And again, some of these steps happen in tandem, obviously. But the first step is the most critical. You always start with planning. You have to break down your target score into quant and verbal targets and understand how you're going to go about it. Because it's okay if you take about, let's say, 2 days or 3 days or even a week to plan it, but plan it right, then you will actually end up saving 1 or 2 months comfortably if you don't plan it. So planning is the first part. And then obviously no plan can actually take you to your target score if you are not learning. So execution is important. So the next stage is execution. Next stage is the learning phase, where you actually focus on both concepts and application for all areas. So that's where you actually learn learn everything. And again, trust me guys, this learning phase, when I say now, most people think, okay, this is just a basic learning phase, but this is the place you are able to, can you hear me now? Let me quickly ask in the poll, can you guys hear me now? I had some internet issue, guys. Can you guys hear me now? Am I audible to you guys now? It should be audible now, guys. Are you able to hear me now? Can you guys hear me now? I see a good number of yeses coming in. Great, guys. Happy to see that. So sorry, I had this internet issue which broke the thing. So I'm gonna get back to this part. Okay. So great. I'm so happy to see that you guys can hear me. So let's get back to this part. So what I was saying was, I'm gonna give you an overview of the entire process. First step is planning. Then it comes to execution, where you learn all the concepts and application related to those areas. And then basically you move to fine tuning. But when I talk about execution, this learning phase, many people think that this is just a basic learning phase that we have to talk about. Okay. But in reality, learning phase is where you basically end up spending about 70 to 80% of your time. So that's a very, very important part of your prep, guys. Never ever take it lightly. Learning phase is where you should be spending about 70% of your time. Okay. Then your fine tuning phase comes into picture. This is where you actually fine tune and work on your weak areas only. And that's about 10 to 15% of your effort. And finally is your mock phase, where you identify the best pacing strategy. So this is an overview about how we are going to structure this webinar. So let's get into the first part, where let's start understanding how to identify your right target score. So again, I understand that most of you would have at least thought about what your right target score should be in terms of 700, 720, 740, or 750. But it is very important that you break it down into sectional targets also. What I mean by sectional targets is your target, verbal, and your quant scores, because unless you have a very clear idea about that, it's not easy to plan it. Okay. So now there are 2 scenarios which are possible. Okay. So basically, first scenario is when you're good in one section. Okay. If you're good in one section, you should try and maximize your score in that section. However, the second scenario is when you're good in both the sections, as in you're equally good in both the sections. In that case, you should balance the target score. Now let's take an example to understand this. Let's say your target score is 750. Okay. And let's say you belong in the first category. Okay. Where you are good in quant. So if you're good in quant and your target is 750, your target quant and verbal score should be quant 51 and verbal 40. That's how you should break it down. Okay. On the other hand, if you are strong in verbal, you're much better in verbal than in quant, you're significantly better in verbal than in quant, then your target score should be a quant 48 and a verbal 45. This should be how you should break down your target scores. Okay. If you're equally good in both the areas, on the other hand, then you should balance the target score. You should try getting somewhere close to that quant 50 and verbal 42 mark overall. So that is how you should break down your target scores in reality. Okay, so this is the first step. And after this step, you need to understand the right sequence of learning. And I recommend that if you are a working professional who is giving less than 20 hours a week to studies, then you should do the section sequentially. I'm talking about the learning phase only right now. Right now, you should, if you're putting in less than 20 hours, you should either do quant or verbal and then move to the other area. And when you obviously move to the other area, you kind of continue staying in touch with the previous one. But in the beginning, if you're putting in less than 20 hours, it doesn't make sense to work on both the things simultaneously. However, if you're working, giving more than 20 hours in a week, you can definitely do both the things simultaneously. That's not a problem. Okay, Anish has a question. How long should one spend for solving questions during learning phase? Good point, Anish. I have that covered. I don't want to come to that answer right away, but I'll definitely talk about that. So let's understand what is the right sequence of studying. And in fact, this is a very common question which I get asked. So we will actually start with verbal first. So I'll ask you guys this question. What do you think is the right sequence of learning for verbal according to you? If you have to start learning verbal, how do you go about learning verbal in terms of doing SC, CR, and RC? Like, do you do it sequentially? If you do it sequentially, how do you do it? Do you do things parallelly, as in parallel, as in do some days SC, some days CR, some days RC? Like, what is that you're doing right now? Just want to hear from you and your thoughts on it. Why do you think that is right or wrong? Suchet says I do SC, then CR, then RC. I think that is what you meant, Suchet, by those commas. Okay. Good to hear from you, Suchet. What about others? What are others doing? And again, as I said, guys, I want this to be interactive. I don't want it to be a monologue where I'm the one who is speaking and you are the one who is listening. So I want every one of you to interact and understand all this. And I would not just give you a certain thought process. I would not just tell you that, okay, do this. I want you guys to understand that. So I'll be explaining those elements to you as well. And I want you guys to understand that point so that you're able to apply it. Shreya says, I'm doing CR, then RC, then I'm doing SC. Okay. Abhishek also follows what Suchet is saying. SC, CR, RC. Azmal says, SC is the toughest for me, so SC first. Okay. Ananya says, CR, then RC, then SC. SC is more tricky than CR is what Saurabh says. Sunny also says, SC, CR, RC. SC for covering basics in grammar, etc. Okay. Good to see your thoughts, guys. Really, really happy to see your thoughts. And trust me, this again is a very important aspect. Why is this important? Because when I speak to students, and I speak to about 10 plus students on a daily basis, and I hear these thoughts from them. I hear very different thoughts. Some people even tell me that, okay, I do SC on one day, CR on another day, RC on another day, so that I am actually getting prepared for all three areas. Some people say, I've started from RC because that's the most difficult part. So if I work on it, I'll do a very good job at it. So again, different people have their different thought processes. And in many cases, I've seen that the sequence that students are following is not the right sequence just because they don't know how it works. They don't know how the GMAT works. So it's mostly driven by lack of knowledge, and they'll just read some information randomly somewhere and they just follow it. But what I want you to understand logically is the skills which are tested on GMAT and how they map to individual areas. So you have a very clear idea that, okay, this is the right sequence and why is this the right sequence. And again, I'm talking about people who are starting their prep or the initial phases of their prep. The first skill that is tested on GMAT is comprehension skills. Okay. What comprehension means is, if given a piece of information, which is a simple piece of information, not too heavy, as in obviously the construction could be difficult or convoluted, but not too heavy in terms of vocabulary, not too many typical terms, like mostly common terms which you hear in your regular language. Can you comprehend the sentence? That's the most important thing. Second thing which is tested is, if we give you multiple pieces of information, let's say as a manager, obviously you are doing GMAT to do a management degree. So the manager, if multiple pieces of information are given to you and there's a conclusion which is drawn out of it, Can you see through those information? Can you connect those pieces of information together and understand whether it is making sense or not? Can you identify the gaps in the information? Can you identify the assumptions in the information or not? That's a very important skill that is tested. Another skill that is tested is if there's a long piece of information or a passage which is given to you, which will happen in B schools, by the way. You will have a lot of case studies to deal with. Can you identify and focus on the main point? Can you do that? These are three very critical skills which are tested on GMAT verbal overall. And trust me, guys, I actually I see a comment from Sudhir, learning new vocabulary. I also felt that vocabulary is tested. In fact, when I was very new, I thought that, but that's not really tested on GMAT. And in fact, I mapped the skills to different sections. You'll understand that in sentence correction, the only skill, again, grammar is also tested, but the only skill which is tested is sentence correction is comprehension alone. Okay, you just have to work on comprehension skills for sentence correction. You just have to understand individual sentences correctly. You don't have to worry about multiple sentences at that point of time. That's what sentence correction is testing you on. In CR, on the other hand, you're tested both on comprehension as well as analytical reasoning skills. You have to understand each sentence, and you also have to connect multiple pieces of sentences together to see whether they are making sense or not, the information is flowing properly or not. And in RC, on the other hand, you are tested on all three skills at the same time. You are tested on comprehension, individual sentences you have to understand, you have to analytically reason to understand whether there is a flaw in the argument or not, and you have to also identify the main point. So given this piece of information, what do you think now? Again, I'm asking you again this question. What do you think now is the right sequence for learning? What is the right sequence for learning according to you? I'm giving you 1 minute to type in chat, and then I'll be back. Let's see your thoughts first, guys. Okay, so now I see at least everyone is saying SC, CR, RC, and few of you are saying RC, then CR, then SC. Okay, so let me make it simple, guys. I'm a very strong advocate of doing sentence correction first. Now, why do I say so? Let's understand this, guys. If you are starting with sentence correction, okay, if you're starting with sentence correction, what you're then doing is you're telling yourself that, okay, I just have to work on one skill at a time. I just have to focus on developing the comprehension skill. Okay, that's the only skill that you are worried about at that point of time. Imagine it this way, guys. If you are doing RC first, some of you are saying I should do RC first, then you're actually planning to do work on all three skills at the same time. That's not advised at all. If you have to go to the third floor of a building, you don't just jump to the third floor. You go from the first floor, then to the second floor, and then to the third floor, right? So if you are doing RC first, you're actually trying to work on all three skills. Abhijit, that's what you're trying to do if you're starting with RC first. If you do SC first, then you just have to worry about one skill. You completely get comfortable on that skill, and then you move to CR. So when you move to CR, you don't have to worry about comprehension at all. That is taken care of. Your focus can now be solely on analytical reasoning, building the analytical reasoning skill well. And if you work on this and build this skill right, then when you move to RC, you don't have to worry about analytical reasoning. This is taken care of. Now, when you're moving to RC, you just have to work on building the focus on main point skill. That's the only skill that you're required to build now. Guys, tell me, is this part clear to you? Are you able to relate to what I'm trying to say here? Quick yes, no in the poll. Is this part clear to you guys? That why is it important to start the sentence correction, then CR, then RC? And again, I'm talking about people who are starting their prep, not retakers who have already prepared for some time. Obviously, you will have your strengths and weaknesses. So there's a different plan of action which is required for you. And I'll talk about that. But people who are just started or are about to start, for them, this is the best logical progression. This is the most logical progression. If you're trying with SRC first, yeah, that's a Pandora's box, trust me. You can, if you're someone who is an avid reader, you might think, okay, that might make more sense. But honestly, the comprehension skills, if that is not great, if you are not good at comprehension, then definitely starting with sentence correction is the best thing to do. Okay, I see 89% of you are clear about this. That's a good thing. Those of you are not, please feel free to ask me any questions that you have in your mind in the comments. I'll be more than happy to take that up for you. I'll be more than happy to take that up, as I said. Now, for quant, what happens in quant? Again, very important that you do basic topics, intermediate topics, and then advanced topics. This is a logical sequence that you should follow in quant. because I have seen many people following a different sequence. In quant, what they do is they'll say, okay, in order to work on quant, I would start working on, let's say, word problems, for example. They will come and say, okay, I'll start working on word problems first, then I'll actually move to, let's say, number properties, and then I'll move to geometry and so on. So that's what generally many people do in quant. However, I don't recommend that. In quant, every topic is interrelated. There are multiple interrelations that exist behind that. Okay, so that's the right sequence that you should follow. So you should work on your basic concepts first, then intermediate concepts, and then advanced concepts. And that's the most logical sequence for quant. Aditya, I'm going to come to your question as well. I've actually explained that, but I'm actually going to explain that for you once again. So in order to work on quant, this is the right sequence that you should follow. You should go about it in this order. Because see, understand it this way. When you have to do prime numbers, okay, prime numbers as a concept will require you to be good at even odd numbers also, okay. It also requires you to be good at exponents. You need to know exponents. Otherwise, you cannot do prime factorization properly. You need to be good at linear equations also. You need to solve equations, okay. And you also need to be good at number basics. You should know about the basics properties of numbers as well. So what this list shows you is the most logical progression, taking into account all the interdependencies that exist. So if you want to take a screenshot of this, you can take a screenshot of this. Otherwise, I'm going to give you an example, a simple way to actually identify how you can get this study plan for yourself, okay. But if you can see, this is color coded. You can see number properties in green, algebra in blue, word problems in red, and geometry in black. So you can see that it doesn't make sense for one to do number properties first or algebra first. Then you are actually having a lot of other interdependencies which you need to cover before coming to the other area. So this is the most logical order that you should follow for quant. Okay. Now, what if you're a retaker? If you have already been preparing for, let's say, 2-3 months, then what you should do? You should then start with a module-wise test. Take a module-wise test for SC, CR, and RC individually, or number properties, word problems individually, and categorize the two other sections, the modules, into 2 areas. Okay, one strong, one where you are strong, one where you are weak. Strong basically means you have more than 70% score there, and weak is where you have less than 70% score. So let's take an example. Let's say SC, CR, and RC, your scores are 90, 60, and 40. Okay. Now, what do you do first? So obviously you should work on your weak areas first. You should work on CR and RC first, and then you should work on SC, because that's like your strong area. There is a very limited scope for improvement over there. But the highest scope for improvement is there in CR and RC. Now, my question to you is, you can see that in CR, your score right now is 60%, okay, and which is slightly more than the score in RC over here, okay. This is slightly more than your score in RC. But then why am I asking you to work on CR first? Why not RC first? RC is at 40%, so why not RC before CR? Why CR before RC in this case? Please tell me what is your thoughts on that. Any thoughts on that in the comment or chat? I'll be happy to take that, hear from you. And in the meantime, I'll take Aditya's question. So Aditya, I explained the logic behind the sequence that I shared. That sentence correction requires you to be good at only the comprehension skill. So if you're working on sentence correction first, you're just focusing on developing one skill set. But imagine that if you start from CR, which requires you to be good at 2 things, comprehension as well as analytical reasoning, then you will actually have to work on 2 skills at the same time. So that's why I said so. Okay, increase the marks in CR, Ajmal. That's good, Ajmal, but isn't RC having a higher scope for improvement? Okay, so just say CR improvement is more likely with higher gains and will also positively impact RC. That's a very valid point. Positively impact RC is the more important point. Is understand, if you're poor in CR, Christina, it's not about CR taking less time than for RC, but it's more about understand it this way. If you're poor in CR, it could be because that your analytical reasoning skills is not that great. Okay. So if you are weak in analytical reasoning, that will impact your score in RC also. You might, if you start working on RC, you don't know whether your analytical reasoning is bad or your focus on main point, that skill is bad. You don't know about that. But if you're working on CR first, you will make sure that your analytical reasoning skills improve. So when you move to RC, you will automatically see an improvement in RC. You will not stay at 40%, you will be at a higher skill level. In fact, it will also become much more easier for you to improve RC, because then you have to just focus on building the focus on main point skills. Okay, I hope that is clear to all of you. So with these things clear in your mind that, okay, what is the right sequence, what are the right target scores, the next step which is important is to create a study plan for yourself, taking care of multiple factors, and the study plan should have clear targets and deadlines. This is very important, guys, because if you do not have clear targets, I have seen many students starting off with the GMAT prep with a lot of steam, a lot of energy, a lot of enthu that they have to complete it in certain time. But then they lose that steam, they lose that enthu after some days, just because they don't have proper deadlines in mind, just because they don't have clear targets. And I'm talking about weekly targets. I'm not talking about 3-month long targets that I have to complete the GMAT in 3 months. That's not a target, guys. That's just a goal that you want to achieve. A proper dedicated target is when you have deadlines assigned to every small task. And in order to do so, again, prep time could be anywhere between 150 to 400 hours, depending on where you are presently. But in order to do so, you have to take into account your strengths and weaknesses. You need to understand what are your strong areas, what are your weak areas. Why is that important? Simply because if you actually know your weak areas, you can actually devote more time to your weak areas. You definitely need to do that. Similarly, it's also important for you to understand how much time is available with you for studies. If you're a working professional, you take a plan of action, which is a random plan that you saw, a 2-month plan or a 3-month plan, which does not tell you how much time commitment is required in a week. Let's say it requires 30 hours a week and you only have 15 hours. That will only demotivate you because you'll not be able to achieve that. So your study plan, your deadline should be taken into account your time available as well. It should also take into account the right sequence of learning for you. So I talked about the sequence of learning a little, but you have to take that into account as well. And then you have to also take into account which content and how much content do you need to study, how many questions to solve at a particular point of time, which topics to study, exactly what to do when. So the study plan that you're going to create has to take into account all of these factors that I've talked about. Now, obviously, many people are not aware, and this is a very humongous task for most students. Like when I was a student, I probably did a lot of planning, but honestly speaking, it was always a very tedious task, very difficult, because I probably don't know what is the right thing to do, like how much to study. And in fact, this is a common question that I hear from students, that they tell me that, okay, I have been using this book, I have been using this course, but I'm not really clear what to do next, what to do the next day, the next week. That's the most common question that people have in their mind. And don't worry, if you're struggling with that, I'm going to provide you a free solution which will help you create a free personalized study plan. And all you need to do for that is you just need to go to GMATWiz portal and create a free study plan, a free account on the portal. And what the portal does, it uses artificial intelligence to understand a lot of data points from you in the real time. So it will automatically ask you the most important things that it needs to learn about you to create a personalized plan. So the first thing, for example, that it asks you is what is your target score? So you can mention whatever your target score is. It will automatically also ask you what is your current score. So you answer if you know this data, if you have this data, just tell what is your current score. You also tell what is your quant and verbal score in case you know it. If you don't know it, that's fine. You can always say, I don't know my section-wise score. So basically the idea is automatically asks you all the questions that it require you need to answer. And if you don't have any answer to it, you can always say, I don't have an answer right now. And it also asks you how much time is available with you, because obviously if a user is having 10 hours a day, 10 hours in a week, they can probably do 15 tasks. But if a user has 20 hours in a week, they can probably do 30 tasks. So it takes into account all these factors. And then the AI engine works to create a very personalized study plan for you, which happens all on the portal in real time. So it automatically identifies where should you start with, what you should do next after that. It identifies all those things in real time for you. And then right now, as you see on the dashboard, it's actually computing the study plan for you. It is identifying what is the right learning curve for you. And it also identifies how much effort would you need to put in to work on all these areas, depending on the time that you mentioned, depending on the effort that you mentioned in the beginning. Okay. And all this is taken into account, and all this taken into account ends up creating a weekly a weekly study plan for you. And you can see now that in the current week, these are the tasks which are assigned for you. 16 hours, you have mentioned, like in this much effort, 13 videos you can do, 12 quizzes you should do, and you have what you need to do over here itself. You can click on the start button and in fact get started by accessing all these activities. You don't have to worry about which quizzes to do, which videos to do. All of this is personalized for you. You just need to go through doing these things. And all this is laid out in a weekly task view. In case you want to actually look at the entire calendar for yourself, you can actually just go to the task view but toggle and toggle it to actually calendar view, and it will show you the entire study plan for you. Okay, so this is a very amazing tool which will help you plan your studies end to end, so you don't have to worry about planning yourself. So in case you want to create a free study plan for yourself, you can actually use this link, which I'm just going to share in the chat over here. You can just use this link and create a personalized study plan for you. The study plan is created free of charge. The content in the study plan, in the free trial, you will only have access to about 10% content, not more than that. But in case you need access to the entire content, you can always upgrade your account and get access to the entire content overall. So this is very easy, very simple. Just create a free trial account and you'll have a proper study plan, detailed study plan for you for every single step of your learning curve. Okay, as simple as that. So first step of learning, making sure that you have a proper plan, because without a plan, a goal is just another wish. You cannot achieve that. You cannot achieve your dream without that. Okay, so let's move to the next part, which is the learning phase. Now, how do you execute the plan of action? Now, before I talk about the execution, and again, as I talk about the execution, let me not say before, because now I'm going to talk about the execution part only. I need to break certain myths, because when I talk to students, I come across a lot of myths. A lot of people don't even understand how the GMAT really works. Most people think that it's just about getting a high accuracy. Accuracy is all that matters on the GMAT. They think that if they get more questions right, on the OG, they have a high chance of getting a high score. But trust me, that's not how GMAT works. And let's break this myth. And in order to break this myth, I'm going to take up some data points, some use cases with you, so that you are able to understand why is this a wrong thought process that accuracy is all that matters. So what you have in front of you is a ESR. Okay, ESR is an enhanced score report, which you can actually get from GMAT after you have taken the test by paying a certain fee. And it tells us over here that the student has scored a 41 in verbal. So this is the verbal score of this student. And it tells us the number of mistakes made by the student in the entire verbal part of the test across the various quarters. So this is quarter 1, this is quarter 2, this is quarter 3, and this is quarter 4. So total of 7 mistakes are made by the student in this 3 quarters overall. Okay. Now, let me introduce another scorecard in front of you. So in this scorecard, on the right hand side, the left hand side, you have the same scorecard that I showed you earlier. Okay, this is the same scorecard that you have over here. And on the right, you have a different scorecard. This student on the right has made a total of 5 mistakes. You can see where the mistakes are being made by the student. And what I want you guys to tell me is, think about guess the verbal score of the student and tell me the verbal score of the student in the, just give me 1 second, guys. I'm going to get you the poll, but what you have to do is take your time, think about the verbal score of the student, and I'm going to get you the poll where you can actually type it out after that. So here is the poll, guys. I want you to think about the verbal score of this student and tell me. See, again, this student has made 5 mistakes. The other student has made 7 mistakes. Okay, the first student has made 7 mistakes. This student has made 5 mistakes. What do you think is the verbal score of the student? You have some options in the poll. Again, some of you are just typing in the chat. You can just do it in the polls first. Okay, I do see the responses have more or less stabilized now. Okay, and I see some comments as well. He has been getting harder questions since he went on answering correct questions, so higher score maybe 45 to 48. Ajmal, 45 to 48 is not in the options. Obviously, that's not the answer, but I get your point. You're saying that the score should be higher, right, for the second student. Okay. Okay, so let me end the poll. As most of you can see, most of you are saying that it should be around 42 to 44. 40% of you, in fact, are saying that it should be around 42, 44. 30% of you think that it should be 39 to 41. Let me reveal the score of the student. And the score of the student on your screen is right here. Okay, guys, you can see this. Can you see this on your screen right here? The score of this particular student is just a 34 in verbal. Just a 34. And guys, this is actual scorecard from GMAT. This is not doctored images that you see, not photoshopped images. These are actual scorecard from the GMAT. Okay, so just a verbal 34. How many of you are thinking that GMAT is really a harsh test? It's really a harsh test. This is really harsh. You are making less mistakes, but you're still getting lower score. So Chet says it said that first 10 questions matter the most. They do, definitely they do. Anyone who says otherwise has not understood the GMAT algorithm probably. So most of you are saying that it is a harsh test, right? Most of you are saying yes to this, right? So understand it, guys. It's not about the accuracy. Understand that. See, look at the difference in the quant and the percentile scores over here. 93 percentile versus 71 percentile. It's a huge difference, even with 2 less mistakes. The reason for that is simple. GMAT is an adaptive test. It does not matter what is your accuracy. What matters more is what is your performance in across difficulty levels. That's what GMAT is made to test you on. That's the best part about GMAT. It understands what your skill level is. And yes, Abhijit, you're right to say the other student scored a verbal 34 because she got less complex questions. What happened with this student over here, in my opinion, is that when the test started, she started making a lot of mistakes in the very beginning of the test itself. So you can see the difficulty level that she got wrong initially itself. That was medium. So the test started at medium difficulty, and she most likely got all the first 3 questions incorrect. And that's when the test felt that this student does not have the capability of getting the questions right, and started serving her much more easier questions overall. And because of that, the difficulty level dropped. So you can see now the difficulty level has dropped down to the level of easy questions over here. Okay, so she got those questions right. She had a good accuracy there, but just because it dropped to a lower level, it took a lot of time to get back on track. Okay, so just to give you an idea, look at the difficulty level chart. Like let's look at the accuracy in the second quarter for both the students. Okay, both of them have a very high accuracy, and that's probably what you looked at, that both of them had a very high accuracy to begin with. In the second and the third and the fourth quarter. But look at the difference in the difficulty level of the correct questions when they are put side by side. See how huge that difference is. So what this first student has showed is basically that he can get hard questions right. He has shown that he can get hard questions right. He has a higher skill level. Whereas this student, on the other hand, has just shown that she can get only the easy questions correct. And that's a very big issue. Okay? And even in the third quarter, if you see, the question difficulty level that the first student got correct was significantly higher compared to the second student. And that's what is the difference on the GMAT. So Anish, it's not just about making, you definitely should not make a lot of mistakes initially, but it is also about making sure that you get the hard questions correct consistently. That's what is more important. So in GMAT, skill matters more over accuracy, and skill basically is simple terms. It's the ability to get a question of any difficulty level correct. You should be able to get even the hard questions right on the GMAT. So just to give you a sense of it, if you're right now in the score of 550 to 650, or someone who is in the score range of 550 to 650, generally they're getting the easy ones right. And why am I talking about the score range? That's a more important question, guys. Why am I talking about this score range in particular? Because I see many people plateauing in this score range. They're not able to move beyond the score range. Okay, the reason for that is very simple. When you're in this score range, you're getting a high accuracy on easy questions, but your accuracy on medium questions is not consistent. And most likely in the medium questions, you are having about 50 to 60% accuracy. And since your accuracy is not high here, the algorithm is not serving you many hard questions, and that's why you're struggling. So what it tells us that, see, easy questions only test you on concepts. Okay, to get the easy questions right, you need to be good in concepts. But in order to get the medium questions and the hard questions right, you need to also know how to apply those concepts. So application becomes much more important in medium as well as hard questions. Okay, so if you are in this score range, it basically means you struggle with the application of concepts. right? So that's what is important. So Manvi has a very important point. Manvi says, when you started getting correct answers, the difficulty level will increase, right? Yes, Manvi, that is supposed to be the case. However, if you start on the wrong foot, if you start bad, in fact, GMAT as a test is a lot more adaptive on the left than on the right. So if you start bad, it penalizes you heavily. If you start well, it also actually gives a very high score to you, but it does not adapt as much as you move forward. It adapts, but the degree of adaptability reduces. Let me put it that way. Okay, so in this score range, what it means is you're not focusing on application. So if you are just focusing on accuracy, one important thing that you miss is application. But if you want to take a 700 plus score, get a 700 plus score, you need to have almost, I would say, close to 100%, 90 to 100% accuracy in easy and medium questions. You cannot afford to get the easy or medium questions wrong. Then you will be served a lot of hard questions. And in this hard questions, even if you're able to, let's say, achieve a 60% accuracy, 50 plus % accuracy, you'll still get a 700 plus mark. So in simple terms, if I have to simplify it further for you guys, in order to get a 700 plus, there are 2 steps to be followed. First thing, make the algorithm serve you hard questions. And this can be done by getting a good accuracy on easy and medium questions. And then get this hard questions right. And this can be done by actually learning the right skills and learning how to apply these skills in GMAT. Okay, so that's what is important. So understand, are you guys now clear about this, that accuracy is not the only thing that matters on the GMAT? A quick yes, no over here. Are you guys clear about this, that accuracy is not the only thing that matters on the GMAT? Quick yes, no in the poll, guys. I'll have a sip of water in the meantime. Okay, so I do see 100% yes till now. That's great to see, guys. I'm so happy that you guys are clear about that, because that's a very important myth I wanted to burst, because unless you understand it right, you will actually focus on the wrong entity. The second thing is, most people now think that, okay, developing the right skill is just about learning the concepts, okay, and then practicing questions. So most people then, after learning concepts, move directly to practicing questions, and that's a very, very big mistake. If you're doing this, you probably still have not understood how the GMAT functions. And let me tell you guys, what is that I did when I started my prep. And this was something which a lot of people do typically. So when I started preparing for sentence correction, the only thought in my mind was, I need to know all the grammar rules. And the book that I took was Wren & Martin. I actually got hold of Wren & Martin, bought that book, started studying it, started learning tons of rules. In fact, I remember that I learned about subject verb rules, tenses, modifiers, pronouns, parallelism, and whatnot. In fact, I also looked at Manhattan as an option at that point of time. So this is what most people do. They take up a book, they learn individual concepts. And what happens is that when you're learning these concepts, you actually do well on individual questions. Like when you do questions which are associated with those topics at the end of the chapter, you do well on them. But the moment you move to 700 level questions, you start getting them wrong. In fact, that is what happened with me. When I started doing 700 level questions, I got them wrong. The reason when I look at it, the simple reason why I got stuck with that was there was no focus on learning on having a common learning thread or application. I was focusing on individual concepts. So when I was doing individual questions, I knew exactly what kind of error am I looking for. And I used to get that question right. But when I'm actually solving a question which is 700 level, I don't know which error to look for. I was not able to identify the error. The reason for that was simple. There was no common learning thread. There was nothing common between these areas which would help me in identifying how to understand that what is the error that I should be looking for. So there was no common rationale behind that. That was the biggest issue that I did with my learning style. In fact, that's one of the common mistakes which most people do. In fact, not just this on SC, even in other areas. For example, in sentence correction, many people start learning the splits approach. How many of you have used the splits approach or are using it currently? Quick yes, no. How many of you have used the splits approach in sentence correction or using it correctly? Splits approach is nothing but vertical scanning of the options and identifying the grammar rules that apply. How many of you are using this approach? or have used that approach earlier? Quick yes, no in the poll. Just want to understand from you guys. Quick yes, no in the poll. Okay. We'll wait for a few responses to come in. How many of you have used vertical scanning of option choices to identify the grammar rules that apply? Some of you might be thinking, well, Piyush, what are you talking about? Before this, you just said that there should be a common learning thread. So again, that's a common learning thread. That's the easiest way to identify which grammar rule applies in which case. Okay, let me end the poll now. So I see about 2/3 of you have used it or have heard at least use it at any point of time or are using it today as well. So splits is a very, very common method, guys. Many people learn this. Skimming and reading comprehension. Don't worry about what is there. Read the passage very quickly. Just see what is the main idea of the para. Read the first line, read the last line, come back to the passage, all of that. That is what skimming is. In data sufficiency, many people say jump to the statements in data sufficiency. Don't care much about the question. It is there. Just look at the statement, look at what can be inferred from that. These are some very popular shortcuts, guys. And trust me, these popular shortcuts are really, really, really expensive. You might get tricked by other people who show you these methods or apply these methods in front of you on few questions and make you feel that, okay, you are empowered, you can actually get questions right by doing this. But that does not happen, guys. That these methods do not work on all questions. Trust me. In fact, when you actually focus on any of these methods, the only thing that is going on in your mind is to save time. You are focusing on saving time. That is the core thought process that you have at that point of time. And this is the very reason why people end up getting stuck in too close choices. And see, all of this I'm talking about because I'm talking about, I want you guys to reach a 750 mark, not get stuck at a 650. If you're looking at a high GMAT score, these things are very, very important. When you actually think too much about saving time, what you end up doing is you start thinking about this in this fashion that basically in GMAT, when you get stuck with two choices in the end because of this approach that you follow, you start thinking that there is just one best choice, which is you have to select. Okay, you start thinking that the best choice trap is there, that what you're accepting, what you thought is the right answer could be the right answer if you just tweak the thought process a little. And you stop thinking GMAT as an objective test. You start thinking about GMAT as a subjective test. And this is a very wrong thing. Understand, guys, in GMAT, there's never two right answers. There's always one right answer and 4 wrong answers. So in case you're picking the wrong answer, you're not just missing something that is right, you're also accepting something that is wrong. So there are no gray areas in GMAT. And that's why I'm telling you this, very important, guys. In sentence correction, for example, if you have to learn, you should not learn these topics individually. You should have a common learning thread, and that common learning thread is the meaning of the sentence. You should not try to make anything in GMAT subjective. All of that is logical. All of that is logical on GMAT. Every single grammar rule which is tested on GMAT has a certain logic behind it. So understand the meaning aspect of it, because meaning aspect is the common binding thread between all these topics. So if you focus on the meaning-based approach, if you focus on the meaning aspect of it, you will never have subjectivity. Everything will become objective for you. So when you are learning all these rules, you should start learning from the meaning approach, and you should focus on that meaning-based approach to solve every single question. And that's one of the biggest reasons we do that in our course as well. In fact, if you are a GMAT-based student, you would have been doing this already in your course. And you can see over here, we have entire lesson of unit 1. Entire unit 1 that you see on your screen is dedicated to just teaching you the meaning-based approach, okay, in a step-by-step fashion. So when you start learning sentence correction, and I'm talking about sentence correction specifically because that's one area where a lot of people struggle. In fact, some of you are talking about that as well. So when you start learning sentence correction, first focus on learning the meaning-based approach. And once you learn that, it is not going to just end at that point. You then hello. So guys, sorry for that. I kind of tried rejoining. Let's see if you can hear me now. If you can hear me now, please type in the poll. Just put it in the poll if you are able to hear me now. Are you able to hear me now, guys? I do see a good number of yes now. Great. I guess there was a issue not in the with the internet, but I guess with the tool. I guess not sure why that happened, but I'm happy that now you guys are able to hear me. So I hope you guys did not lose me, uh, uh, lose a lot of what I said. So I'm gonna just start with the slide again because this is where I heard someone saying that you're not audible. So basically, when it comes to RC, for example, you have to do involved and evolved reading, as in you have to read and understand each and every part of the RC well. So even before getting into individual questions, you have to focus on the right reading style. And this is something which was never taught to me. When I was a student, I was just given RC passages to solve, and then the teacher used to solve those passages in front of us, telling us why one answer is right and the other four are wrong. But no one really told me how to read the passages. And trust me, guys, if you do not know how to read the passage, no matter how many practice questions you do, it's not going to help you improve your score. So the right methods for learning every single thing in GMAT, these are the right methods that you should follow. The meaning-driven approach for sentence correction, the pre-thinking approach for critical reasoning, the involved and evolved reading approach for RC, drawing inference for DS, and three-step process for PS. Now, why am I talking about all this? You might think, again, this is important for you to know, because if you don't know this, if you don't follow this approach, it is not going to work out irrespective of how much practice you do. Okay, so if you want to learn these methods, one way to do is you can go through GMATRisk platform. In fact, we are launching a new crash course recently. This week itself, we are launching a new crash course. The batch is starting from 17th of July. And in this crash course, what we do is we provide a hybrid learning model in which you have the entire online course that I showed you earlier. Along with that, you have 25 live classes, which run over 11 weeks period. These 25 classes are covering all aspects of quant and verbal as well. And this crash course ensures that you're learning the right application skills through live sessions like this. For quant and verbal individual topics, you get to learn this. And this is the live course that we are running for a starting price of $349 for both quant and verbal. If you want to just take verbal, you can do it for $249. This will include 12 classes instead of 25 classes, because in this 25 there are 12 classes for quant and 12 classes for verbal. But you can also do a verbal only crash course if you want to. You have the link to check out the product. But this is a very, very amazing course, because this crash course batch is going to be taken by our senior experts, Sunita Singhvi and Shakib Hasnan. So if you want to really learn from the best tutors in the industry, you can definitely look at this crash course and learn all the methods that I talked about. Okay, so let's now move to the third stage. Okay, so practice makes a man perfect. A lot of people think that, okay, I do practice and I get better at it. However, that's not how it works. Most people think that practicing questions and taking mock tests is all they need to do. In fact, many people come and ask me that, Piyush, how many mocks should I do? In what frequency should I do mocks? And I say, guys, that's the wrong thought process. If you're not prepared and you're taking a mock test, the mock test is only going to tell you that you're not prepared. It's not going to show you a good score just because you're taking more and more mocks. And just thinking that by doing more mocks, you're going to improve is also a fallacy. You're actually lying to yourself by doing that. It is very important in that case for you to understand that first thing you need to focus on is improving your skills rather than taking mocks. And you don't learn from questions that you solve, you learn from solutions. Now, how do people analyze the solutions? And this is a very common problem. In fact, I'm speaking to every student who is out here, including even the GMATRisk students. Please don't make this mistake. Many people I speak to come to me and tell that, okay, I review the solutions. And when I ask them, okay, how do you review solutions? They say, I review the solutions only when I get a question wrong. And the assumption here is, if I've gotten a question right, I have used the right method to solve it, which is not always necessarily true. Even if you get a question wrong, or even if you get a question right, you still need to check the solution to make sure that you have gotten it right for the right reasons. Okay, and spend time on not just option analysis. Many people, when they get a question wrong, they will just look at the options. They will look at what is that the option that they marked and what is the right option, and they will just look at that option and see, okay, this time I missed a tense. This time I made a calculation mistake. This time I missed the concept of prime numbers. They focus on what they missed. They try to memorize that so that next time they don't make that same mistake. But that's a very wrong way of thinking. That's not how GMAT is going to work. You're not going to get the same question. You should not focus on what is the mistake that you did. If you want improvement in your score, you need to focus on why is that you made that mistake. Okay, is that part clear to all of you guys? Quick yes no over here. Is that part clear to all of you guys? That it is important for you to review each solution, even if you get the question right, and look at it from the approach perspective, not just look at the options, look at the analysis, look at the entire understanding, and make sure that you have got it right for the right reason. Is that clear to all of you guys? Okay, great. I see 100% yes. That's a great thing, guys. I'm so glad that is clear to you. And let me make it easy for you. So how do you master the approach? So I talked about the right approaches. I showed you some approaches, but how do you master the approach? In order to master the approach, you need to refer to solutions which follow a consistent and logical method. Very important, guys. You cannot master the approach by referring to solutions which are not logical, which are actually shortcut driven. So very important thing is that you should have access to consistent and logical solutions. When I was a student, I did not even have access to those because most of the questions were solved using shortcuts. Most of the questions only told me why each option choice is incorrect. And there was very little information provided on the analysis of the question stem to speak about. Okay. And then verify each solution, as I said, irrespective of whether you get it right or wrong. And spend 80% of your time reviewing the sentence, argument, or passage analysis. And when you're doing so, note down the variances in your approach so that you can master the right approach. So don't just look at the analysis, read it, rather ask yourself questions that, okay, is this how I did it? Is this how I went about it? And let me show that to you. So I'm gonna help you understand how to review solutions with the help of an example. So I want you guys to read this question. This is a CR question. I don't want you to solve it. I'm not gonna solve it either. I just want you guys to spend 1 minute on it and read through this question. Okay, just read through this question. And then I'm going to show you how to analyze the solution. Okay, that's what I want you guys to understand. So read through this question. You have 1 minute. I'm going to be muted for 1 minute, basically. Okay. Go to the solution. So basically, this is the solution part 1. Again, this is a GMAT-based question and GMAT-based analysis of it. But what I want you to focus on over here is the analysis which is presented. So when you're reviewing the solution, the way you should look at it is that, okay, when I read this first line of the sentence, when I read this first line of the argument, did I analyze and come to this inference mentioned over here that total area of cultivated land is equal to total area of unexplored land? Did I come to this inference or did I not? That is the level of analysis that you need to do. Similarly, you need to ask yourself that when you read this part, the second sentence, okay, did you combine this information with this information and come to this inference? There is a lot more cultivable land on earth than current estimates indicate. Again, I'm not solving the question as I said, but what I'm trying to say is that you should do variance analysis. You should do variance analysis at each stage properly. It's very important that you do variance analysis at each and every stage. Make sure that your line of reasoning matches with the solutions. And let me ask you another question, guys. How many of you used to analyze the solutions in this exact fashion, which I've showed you? How many of you used to do this or have been doing this in this exact fashion? Let me hear from you. Quick yes, no, guys. How many of you have been doing this or used to do this solution analysis in this exact fashion, which I've just showed you? And please be honest with me over here. Just want to see your thoughts on this. Like, I just want to collect some data, understand whether you used to do it in this fashion or not. Okay, so I do see some votes still coming in. Let's wait for a few more to come in. All right, so I do see enough votes. Let me end the poll now. So I see about close to 50% of you saying that I did not used to follow this, and for 50% of you are saying that I used to follow this. So I'm happy to know who you or the ones to hear that at least 44% of you have been doing this. That's great to know. Those of you who have not been doing this, please do this, guys. Don't cut corners on solution analysis because you do not learn from doing more questions. You learn from each solution that you solve questions. So do more do put in more effort on reviewing the solutions properly. So when you're learning each topic, there are these 3 stages of learning that you should follow always. After learning concepts, master the methodical approach. Learn the approach to solve those concepts right away. Because if you do not learn the right approach, that's not going to help you. You are just wasting your time. You're not improving at all. So make sure you're learning a methodical approach at that very instance. And then you should move to practicing questions on the topic. If you do not learn the methodical approach, you will end up repeating the same mistakes again and again. And to help you, in GMAT, we have come up with this idea of concept booster, where a concept booster is given to you in every topic. I'll show you that as well a little while, where you solve only one question at a time, where you get to see the analysis of the solution being provided, and you are able to relate to the solution line by line to figure out the gaps in your application. And this is a scientific method which works really well if you do it right. Okay, and each question in the concept booster is handpicked, and it covers a different aspect tested on the GMAT. So it's very critical that you actually do the concept boosters well. In fact, that is deeply ingrained in the GMAT Viz learning process. Every concept or every topic that you start with, you first start with video lessons to learn the concepts on those. And then you move to learning the application using the concept boosters. And finally, you get to the practice questions phase through the quizzes that we have. So this is a typical learning curve that you should follow at any point of time when you're learning a particular topic. Okay, now comes the question. So there was this question which was asked, I guess, by Anish or some other person in the beginning. They said, when do I time, when to time oneself? Like, what should be the right amount of time? So again, it depends on which stage of learning you are in. If you are in the learning phase, as in the beginning of the prep, you should focus on learning the right method. Because understand it this way, guys, when you are fresh to something, when you are new to something, learning the right method will take you a little bit of time. At that point of time, if you start thinking about timing, that's not the right thing to do. After you have learned the right method, when you move to your fine-tuning stage, that's when you should start focusing on your timing. That, okay, how much time am I taking on individual areas? And let me work on those timing gaps that I have. So this is where your timing should come into focus. So don't time yourself in learning phase. Very important lesson, guys. If you want to take a note of it, take a note of it. Because if you start timing yourself in the learning phase, if you start worrying about timing too soon, your focus will shift away from learning the right method to doing it fast. For now, your focus should be on doing it right, not doing it fast. That should be your focus. And then if you don't focus on learning the right method, you will end up seeing your score stagnating in the range of 600 to 650. You will be able to solve questions in the right amount of time, but you will not be able to get them right. What is more important is getting them right first and then reducing the time. And understand it, guys, whenever you learn a new process, it always takes you some time to get used to it. So it will always take you some additional time to get used to the method, and then only you should start timing yourself. Okay, is this part clear to all of you? Quick yes, no. Is this part clear to all of you guys? Quick yes, no over here. Is this part clear to all of you? Just see some responses from you. I have a poll. You just can respond to that poll. Is this part clear to you, that how should you time yourself? Okay. Great. I can see 80% yes. Those who have doubts, please feel free to ask in the poll. In the interest of time, I'll move forward. So master one topic before moving on. Ensure that this is also one more very important thing in your fine-tuning phase, that when you are actually learning each topic, before you move to the next topic, you should master that topic. Because if you have not mastered the more basic topic, it will actually create issues for you in the other topics. So take a topic-wise test to identify your strengths or weaknesses. If you have weaknesses, identify the concept gaps, work on the concept gaps. But if you don't have the tools to understand it, issues will pile up. So at GMAT Viz, we have a very personalized learning curve. In fact, what we do when you take a quiz and you complete the quiz, you submit on submit quiz, click on submit quiz, it will automatically use artificial intelligence to identify whether you have understood that concept well or not. So you can see it is analyzing your strengths and weaknesses and identifying personalization for you and finalizing the suggestions which are provided. And what you see on your screen right now is activities which are added on your weak area. So based on your strengths and weaknesses, there are some videos, some quizzes which are added to your course. And once you accept this week, like these changes, it will automatically get added to your course in real time. And now you can just go to your course and access those videos. So what we are doing is we are analyzing in real time what your weak areas are. And you can see there are some short videos which are added and an additional quiz which is also added, so that before you move forward, you get working on these areas and improve them before you move forward. Okay, so very important that you work on each and every topic before you move forward. Okay, now if you're someone who is looking at personalized advice, if you're someone who is preparing from a long time and not able to get to the target score, you can actually connect with our consultants to actually understand how you should take your GMAT learning curve forward. And in fact, this is a very detailed process that we have, where we understand the various factors, including your time available, the resources that you have used till now, your target score, your strengths and weaknesses, and a multitude of other things to basically help you understand what should be your right strategy to improve your score. So in case you want to connect with our experts and understand from them how to go about improving your GMAT score, you can always schedule a call using this link. Most of the calls generally are taken by me and the team, mostly depending on your use case. We will help you understand what is your live learning process. Okay, now the fine-tuning phase. So in the fine-tuning phase, you should devote about 60 to 70% of your focus on your weak areas solely. And again, this is also a very critical factor, because when I speak to students, I've seen people, once they're done with the learning phase, many people in the fine-tuning phase just focus on randomly doing questions. So randomly doing random practice is not going to help you. Randomized things don't help you. You have to focus on your weak areas. You have to have an improvement plan in place. So devote about 60 to 70% of your time on your weak areas solely. So identify what your weak areas are and devote extra time for them, because if you work on your weak areas, you will see that improvement happening. And divide the rest of the time on revision and general practice. Okay, that's what you should do. Now, how to tackle weak areas? So identify whether you have concept gaps or application gaps in your weak areas. So if your score is less than 60% in a topic, it means you have concept gaps. If your score is between 60 and 85, it means you have application gaps. In fact, if you're a GMAT-based student, you will also see this on your dashboard. You don't even have to worry about what your concept and application gaps are. The AI will automatically identify that for you and give you improvement modules. But if you're not a GMAT-based student and you want to do it yourself, then in case you have concept gaps, work on learning the concepts and the formulas, and then learn how to solve questions and practice 15 to 20 questions on that area before moving on. However, if you have application gaps, you don't need to work on concepts. You just need to improve the methodology. So learn how to solve questions methodically and practice 10 to 15 questions before moving on. Okay. So Tolika has a question. In case I don't have enough time now, but can devote more time in the future, can I change that in the personalization? Yes, Tolika, you can do that on GMAT-based platform. Every week it asks you how much time you have in the current week. You can always increase or decrease the time. In fact, at any point of time, if you want to change the time availability in the current week, you can just log in. On the top right, you will see your name, icon and your name. You click on it and you can see my profile. Just click on my profile and there's an option to edit your plan. There you can edit the timing and everything at that moment itself. Okay, so how to work on your weak areas: revise the concepts, solve and review questions, and focus on learning application. And when you are doing this, remember, quality is much more important than quantity. It is not about doing more questions, but it is more about doing them right. Okay, and improve timing too. So take sectional tests, optimize weak areas, and take sectional tests and reduce your timing. Focus on areas also where you're taking extra time to solve questions, and do work on those areas separately. Now with that, we move to the mock test phase. Now, how do we use mock test? Should you use mock test? So the right mock strategy is that you should learn about the timing strategies, then take one mock every 3 to 4 days, and this should be happening towards the end after the fine tuning is done. And focus on analysis. Do not just move to the next mock. Look at each and every question, see exactly how you perform, see exactly which questions you got wrong, and everything in depth. It's very, very important that you do this step properly, because this step is going to be a very crucial step in your approach. And if your score is 50 to 60 points away from your target score, work on fine tuning and decrease the frequency of mock tests. There's no point in taking more mocks at that point of time. If you're 50, 60 points away, there are big gaps in your learning curve, and you definitely need to improve on them before moving forward. Okay, so that's pretty much what I wanted to discuss about the strategy. So this is how you can actually prepare and approach your GMAT to get a 750 plus on it. So in case you have any other questions, feel free to ask me in the chat now. I'll be happy to take them up for you. If you want to register for a free trial, you can always do that by going to our website, and you can also connect with me if you want to using on this email ID and the WhatsApp number, which I have mentioned over here. Okay, so if you have any questions in mind, feel free to open up and ask those questions. I'll be happy to take them up. Okay. Should we complete the concept first and then practice, or should we do it simultaneously, or do the practice first, or to know the approach to correct answers and then learn the concept? So Shreya, if you are there with me, I covered this in depth here. So these are the steps. Let me go back actually. So this 3 steps you have to follow. First, learn concepts, then master a methodical approach, and then practice questions. Okay. Now you might think, okay, how do I master a methodical approach? You need to learn what is the right approach to solve those questions, and you obviously learn it through questions, but more importantly through solutions. You should have access to solutions which are teaching you a methodical approach. I hope this answers your questions, Shreya. So this is the method that you should follow. Let me look at the other questions. Anyone else has any question they can ask? Just wait a second, guys. I just share my screen. Anyone else has any other questions, feel free to ask them. I'll be happy to take that up. Okay. So again, announcement of the crash course. This is the next crash course batch which we are starting this week. In case you have not looked at it and you're looking at something which can help you prepare for GMAT in a very quick timeline, about 3 months or so, you can look at this. This is a course which we are running from the scratch. It covers every area of content verbal in depth overall. So you can look at it over here as well. Okay, I don't see any other questions, guys. So I hope this webinar was helpful. It gave you a good idea about how to go about your prep at every single stage. And it was really, really nice interacting with you. And I would definitely love to interact with more of you in the future. And one more thing, those of you who have not registered for that B-School talk show, I'll just quickly share the link once again. In case you have not registered, we are launching a talk show series, chapter 1 next week, where we are going to invite B-School students to talk about their experiences and all. So you can actually check this out. And if you want, you can just register for this webinar series. Thank you, Manvi. I am happy to know that you found this webinar informative. This is really good to know. Thank you so much, guys. Have a good evening, good night, and good morning based on wherever you are. Thank you so much.